The following podcast is a W2M Network original production. Visit W2Mnet.com for all of our other great podcasts, plus news, reviews, articles, and opinions from the worlds of wrestling, video games, football, and entertainment.
And hello, everybody, and welcome yet again to this edition of Wrestling Unwrapped. I'm your host, Patrick Ketza, and joining me, as always, Mr. Harry Broadhurst.
Good evening, Patrick. What is this crap? We're actually starting at 8 o'clock. Who are these people and what have they done to Wrestling Unwrapped?
I don't know. It feels like Casper's here somewhere or something.
Like a frickin' ghost or something. I don't know what's going on. The ghosts of podcast normal or some, I don't know. All right.
So essentially the ghosts of podcast past.
I remember a time where we used to start on time. It happens. It's cool. Hi, everybody. You know, they're all listening, and they're all listening not live because we're a recorded podcast now due to unfortunate network conflictions. But they're all listening wondering what the hell we're talking about because it doesn't matter to them that it's actually 8:02 p.m. Eastern Standard Time when we start this. It's whatever time it is that they're listening to it on demand here on Spreaker.com.
Or on W2Mnet.com.
Yes, which, by the way, Wrestling Unwrapped is a presentation of W2Mnet.com and officially of the W2M Network. www.W2Mnet.com. You can check out mine and Patrick's review of ROH's Glory by Honor 2012 and Unbreakable Hope. We hope to have another review up for you guys sometime within the next week or so. We're aiming for Shine Volume 1. We'll see how it works out.
And?
Oh, are we doing the plug for our sponsor now, too? Okay, fine.
Might as well.
In addition, tonight's episode is brought to you by the Madhouse Toy Chest. Stores.ebay.com/Madhouse Toy Chest. If you are a fan of anything wrestling, DVDs, action figures, magazines, VHS tapes, posters, what have you, you can find it inside of the Madhouse Toy Chest. Mention that you heard this advertisement here on Wrestling Unwrapped and receive a free gift with your purchase. That is stores.ebay.com/Madhouse Toy Chest.
It's kind of one of the rare cases where not only do we start on time, but we did all of that, all of our opening BS and all of our plugs, and we still haven't even mentioned what the hell we're doing.
Yeah, well, you know, name of the episode kind of tells everybody that, so I feel like the plugs and the sponsorships are more important than the name of the show.
This is true. So, yeah, in this case, it's an off night for us, kind of, because we're actually doing things right here. But in this case, we're going to turn it from a night off to a night out. AIW needs a women's champion. So what better way than to have an entire one-night tournament to crown the first ever women's champion? And what better way to do it than on the first female-dominated show in AIW history? Tonight, we're doing Girls Night Out 1. Like we said, featuring an 8-woman tournament to crown the first ever AIW Women's Champion. But actually, if I'm not mistaken, are all of the other titles on the line?
No. There is no absolute title match.
Oh, okay. So, 3 out of 4 titles. Well, 2 out of 3 active, plus the 4th.
Well, you know what they say, 2 out of 3 ain't bad.
3 out of 4 is even better, technically.
All right, Mr. Mathematicas.
I'm a numbers guy. What do you want?
In case you're wondering, the absolute champion at this time frame, according to our friends at CageMatch.net, was Drake Younger.
Imagine that.
Hey, Drake's cool. I wish referee Drake worked well in his future endeavors in NXT.
Yeah, to be fair, I do miss him.
Likewise,
wow.
I think he was underrated. But let's not get sidetracked with conversations about Drake Younger. We can talk about Drake on a show that Drake is actually on. He's not on this one, even though he is the champion of the company. So let's go ahead and tell everybody what they need to know about the show here.
I think we've kind of gotten through everything.
No, we haven't. You haven't named the place. You haven't named the date. You haven't done any of that stuff.
All right.
Would you like me to, since I have it right in front of me?
Sure, why not?
All right. Absolute Intense Wrestling Girls Night Out 1, May 15th, 2009, from the West Park Party Center in Cleveland, Ohio. Shall we go ahead and go right into our results?
Yeah, you might as well.
All right. First round matches, the first four. In 5 minutes and 41 seconds, Sami Lane pins Mary Elizabeth, not yet Monroe, and
Not
even
yet.
further, Kelly Klein, with a roll-up with a tight assist. Hailey Hatred pins Allison Wonderland at 8:41, and I'm going to say this just because I know it pisses Patrick off, with a Fisherwoman Buster.
It wasn't even a buster. You jerk. It was a suplex.
With a Fisherwoman Buster. That's Hailey's finish. Go with it. Girl Dynamite Jennifer Book pins Brittany Force with a super kick at 6 minutes. Jessica Havok pins Super Oprah, explanation required, at 8:54 with a flatliner. Pardon the interruption, Aaron Bauer, as Faith and Nothing defeat the New Beverly Brothers. And I actually have a story about these gentlemen that I will be sharing once we get to this match here. At 3 minutes and 53 seconds, with a combination of the Vertebreaker and 3-2-1 sick. Vincent Nothing pins Bobby Beverly. Disc 2. Semifinals see Hailey Hatred pin Jennifer Blake with a backdrop driver, also known as a Saito suplex for those scoring along at home, at 15:42. Sami Lane pins Jessica Havok with a rope-assisted sunset flip at 4 minutes and 37 seconds. The young studs of Eric Ryan and
Real quick, the differences in those times is rather staggering.
The differences in the talent level at this particular point of their respective careers was rather staggering as well.
This is true.
I mean, don't get me wrong. I think Jessica's turned into a magnificent worker, mostly because I don't want her to kill me. No, actually, in all seriousness, Jessica has turned into a really good worker, but she was still relatively young at this point in her career, and Sami Lane was not the kind of person that was going to carry anybody to a good match, because she was only in the business for 3 years herself at this point. All right, moving on. The AIW Tag Team Champions, the Young Studs, Eric Ryan and TJ Dynamite, retain the tag team titles when Eric Ryan pins Flip Kendrick of Aeroform at 15:24. Flip Kendrick's partner is Lewis Linden. They are brothers.
Indeed.
Josh Prohibition retains the AIW Intense Division title. It's like their Intercontinental title for reference point. Pinning Johnny Gargano, yes, that Johnny Gargano, at 17:22 with the Drunken Driver. Easy for me to say. Jesus.
Real quick. He what's the belt?
Retains.
No, regains. Johnny was a champion.
Oh, son of a bitch. Wait, son of a bleep. Could have sworn J Pro went into that match as champion. All right, anywho, my bad. Apologies. Main event, AIW Women's Champion is crowned as Hailey Hatred pins Sami Lane with a Tiger Suplex at 9:55. And actually, come to think of it here, looking back at the Champions Guide here on Cage Match, yeah, Gargano had won the title on February 28th of 2009.
Off of Johnny DeMarco.
Jimmy DeMarco.
Jimmy DeMarco, sorry.
So Prohibition ended Gargano's 76-day reign at this point.
And he himself would have an 86-day reign.
Losing the belt back to Gargano at Absolution?
Losing the belt to Vacant.
Oh, Vacant. Never trust him. Wins titles wherever he goes.
He should be a Hall of Famer. Anyway. Oh, thank you, Harry. So, yes, we've got 10 matches to get through, including 3 title matches and one segment that I don't think any of us actually wants to mention. Anyway.
We can briefly discuss it since it happened, but I'm not going to spend a whole lot of time talking about it.
No, we're not. Anyway, AIW needs a women's champion, and quite frankly, occasionally everybody needs a night out. So what better way to celebrate that? This is AIW Girls Night Out.
Number 1 from 2009.
Thank you. Anyway, so yes, we don't actually open with the very first match. We open with an introduction to everybody, and
which, by the way, just real quick here, I just want to say I love the theme song for this show. I've never been a huge AFI fan, but between this and Miseria Can't Carry that Punk used, they grew on me.
And
what?
And there's a third one you like. I know you do.
Oh, Madison Eagles' theme song.
Bingo! Prelude 1221. So I guess you like more AFI than you thought.
Apparently, no. I mean, I always knew that Miss Murder was AFI. I originally did not know that Miseria Can't Carry was. And I remember asking you about Madison's theme song when I heard it for the first time.
Yes, this is true. Also, there was a wrestler, and I can't think of it, who also used Miss Murder. I want to say it was Lufisto.
I believe Lufisto did use Miss Murder for a while.
Like when she was part of the Suicide Blondes with, of all people, Jennifer Blake.
Hey, Girl Dynamite. We'll talk more about her a little bit later.
Indeed we will. So, kicking things off, though, we go into our first match, and it is Sami Lane facing off against Mary Elizabeth, later to be known as Mary Elizabeth Monroe, and currently known as Kelly Klein.
Of the Women of Honor.
Hell of a change. Yeah, hell of a change there. For the longest time, I didn't even realize Kelly Klein was Mary Elizabeth Monroe. I mean, in terms of an opener, not bad, but maybe not the right first match.
I think they made a mistake starting with the heel going over in the first contest.
Especially because, if I'm not mistaken, she's the only heel to go over in the first round.
Havok, Blake, and Hatred. Yeah, you would be correct.
Havok, no.
Havok, Blake, Hatred. You would be correct. She was the only heel. If you'd let me finish my thought before you interrupt me.
Sorry. I thought you were saying Havok was a heel.
No.
I was going to say nope.
Technically speaking, Havok Oprah was face versus face. We'll talk more about that match when we get to it.
Yeah. Yeah, like you said, go ahead.
Thank you. I think that the way to go here, if it were me running this particular show, I think the way that I would have won is I would have started with the female face of AIW kicking off the first Girls Night Out. I would have had Hailey Hatred's match against Alice in Wonderland starting this show.
But at the same time, do you run the risk of, well, you kind of already do, but do you run the risk of foreshadowing a little too much then?
Correct me if I'm wrong in the results I just read. Didn't Hailey follow her immediately anyway?
Yeah.
What's the difference if you flip the matches around and give the babyface the win in the first match? I see no difference.
I'm just saying not that particular babyface.
So what, you would have had one of the other ones start there? I don't think you could have had Jay Hav and Super Oprah start. So what do you start with? Jennifer? No. What do you start with then? Jennifer Blake and Brittany Force?
Yeah.
We'll talk more about those matches once we actually get to them in the card. But
yeah. But yeah, speaking specifically on this one, you can tell that they're both, actually, I believe at this point both are relatively very young. I think Sami Lane was, you said, only 3 years in at that point, and
yes.
Mary Elizabeth could not have been much longer, if longer at all. So it was kind of a basic match. Nothing bad, but nothing. It was just kind of It seemed like it was just there, and the only real good parts about it, to me at least, was just the very ending where Sami Lane, has to cheat to win, essentially setting up the whole night for her.
No, I don't think that these are the two women that I would have put out as the start of the promotion if it were me. And the main reason I say that is because I think that with somebody established in AIW such as Hailey Hatred, with Jennifer Blake having the name recognition that she does, because this would have been around the time, if I'm not mistaken, that she was teaming with Allison Danger and Shimmer. And Jessica Havok was a known name in Cleveland thanks to Cleveland All Pro Wrestling and JT Lightning around this time as well. I think that would have been the way to go with having one of those three ladies start the show off rather than having the relatively inexperienced duo of Sami Lane and Mary Elizabeth starting the show.
And we'll talk about the reason a little later on why you couldn't really have Havok start the show, and it's not because of her. It's what happens with her opponent. I mean, you don't start the show with that.
I know what happens with her opponent, and I'm perfectly fine with Jay having Super Oprah going on last of the first four first-round matches. Easy for me to say, Jesus, I'm off to a start tonight, aren't I?
Anyway, so yeah, Sami Lane picking up the victory via cheating, let's be honest. So we move on to our next match, and as you mentioned, it is essentially female face of AIW, Hailey Hatred, taking on Alice in Wonderland in another first-round matchup. And quite an improvement over the first match. Hailey, I think even now, is held in very high regard over a lot of her American work, even though she may still only wrestle in Japan. For the longest time, she did only wrestle in Japan.
I know she came back to the States circa 2012-ish, 2012, 2013-ish, to work for AIW again. I know that she worked a couple of Girls Night Out shows, as well as I believe she worked in Absolution or two around that time as well. Because I think she ended up wrestling John Thorne once again, the Passion John Thorne one more time, in regards to setting everything up for Absolution that year. I want to say it was 2012.
She may have also done a Shimmer I was at. I'm not 100% certain about that, though.
Well, you know what you do? You Google search that.
I'm about to.
Okay. Well, while he's Google searching, I'll go ahead and give my thoughts on this contest. Hailey Hatred has long been considered the female face of AIW, and she was the reason, according to the storyline, that this division was brought to the forefront and given the opportunity to have a women's champion crowned in the first place. A lot of that had to do with the aforementioned feud she had with Jimmy DeMarco, and Jimmy saying that women had no place in professional wrestling, and Hailey Hatred's position on that being that she was going to beat Jimmy DeMarco's ass until he felt that women had a place in AIW wrestling.
And beat them and beat them and beat them.
As far as Alice in Wonderland goes, I want to say she was in the age of the fall around this time. The ring gear would certainly fit.
Trying to think of the time frame here. We're talking about 2009?
Yes. I know the age of the fall was a thing at this point.
I just remember the Age of the Fall having seemingly a lot of different female wrestlers.
The three that I can think of are Lacey, Allison, and Mischief.
And I can think of the two that were popping into my head were the two that we're not talking about, being Lacey and Mischief.
I know for a fact that Alice in Wonderland was loosely associated with the Age of the Fall as well. According to Cage Match, in regards to our previous contest, both Sami Lane and Mary Elizabeth both debuted in 2006.
So, as long.
Speaking of 2006, that's when Alice in Wonderland debuted as well. She would wrestle until May of 2010 before her retirement from the business. I knew she was not wrestling anymore. I knew that for sure.
Fair enough. And
all right, so yes or no on the Hailey Hatred and Shimmer thing that you were thinking of?
No, actually. She doesn't show up at 52 or at 57.
Hailey Hatred retired in August of 2013.
Oh, there you go.
This is according to her Cage Match page. Take it with a grain of salt. These pages aren't necessarily always accurate.
If there's one that I would trust, it's them, though. Anyway, though. So, yeah, Hailey Hatred picks up the victory over Alice in Wonderland. This would have been a better match to go first. Let's be honest. It was a better match.
I agree. I think that you do two things by having this match start the show rather than Sami and Mary Elizabeth. I think Hailey's more established in AIW, and you get the fans off to a hot start by having a known name in the AIW rings in Hailey Hatred starting the show. And B, I don't think Sami or Mary were up to the level of Hailey Hatred or Alice in Wonderland as workers at this point. Now, obviously, Mary Elizabeth Monroe would eventually get a lot better. And she's still involved with Ring of Honor, as we mentioned earlier, as Kelly Klein. Sami Lane, to my knowledge, still wrestles occasionally as well. Both of these two women are retired. The other two women are still involved in wrestling there. But I would say when it comes to overall success in terms of exposure and stuff, the two women that immediately come to mind out of the first four that we're mentioning so far are Kelly Klein, current day, and Hailey Hatred from this time frame.
Oh, I would say without a doubt. In terms of overall knowledge, especially once Hailey would go to Japan, it would become an even bigger name in Japan than she was here. So, yeah, those two, without a shadow of a doubt, would be the most successful out of the first four that we've seen here, without a doubt.
Yeah, well, the woman in our next contest upstages them both, and that would be Girl Dynamite Jennifer Blake.
Our next contest, once again, a first-round match. They're doing all of the matches back-to-back like most sane companies would, so thank you for that. It is, like Karen just mentioned, Girl Dynamite Jennifer Blake facing Brittany Force. And I'll say this. Girl Dynamite likes her Kobashi chops. Because I think she did it 4 or 5 times in the match. Which, okay, that's fine. It's just something that I happened to notice. I was like, boy, she's really liking those Kobashi-style chops.
Maybe it was more so that Brittany Force just pissed her off to the point that she felt the need to Kobashi chop her. Do you ever think about that? No.
Yeah, no, it's not that.
I've
also seen Jennifer Blake. Real quick, I've also seen Jennifer Blake Kobashi chop a fan.
I would say that the Japanese influence that we saw out of Jennifer Blake might have come from her longtime tag team partner, Alice in Danger.
very well could have. And obviously, those two teaming, I think, legitimately around the world, actually.
U.S., Canada, and possibly Japan, maybe Mexico as well.
Yeah, so...
I know for a fact that Blake was regularly wrestling in Mexico around this time frame.
See, the team that I'm more familiar with, but that's due to me following Shimmer, is the Suicide Blondes, which is Jennifer Blake and Lufisto. Not so much her and Allison Danger.
See, it was more early run of Shimmer, like the era before you got into the company, that Danger and Blake were teaming up together.
Yeah. I mean, I wouldn't even be involved with Shimmer until the 40s. And that was post both teams. Hell, they may have been post Blake in Shimmer, now that I think about it. But getting back to this match,
she's still wrestling? I'm curious.
Maybe.
According to her, there's no retirement date listed on her cage match, but I can't think of. Yes, she does. As recently as August of 2016, she beat Rosemary, BKA Courtney Rush.
I'm not going to bring her up here because I can feel a darkness descending on me, so I'm not going to bring her up here.
BCW Heatwave 2016, Jennifer Blake defeats Rosemary. So there you have it. All right, we're moving on.
A cloud forming over my head. Anyway. So, yeah, you can kind of see that Jennifer Blake is definitely the more polished of the two in this ring. So I'm more than happy that she ends up picking up the victory here to move on to the semifinals. So, I mean, just any final thoughts on this before we go to the final first round match?
I think I have somewhere in the neighborhood of about 3 or 4 Brittany Force matches, which isn't a lot. At the same time, it's also enough for me to know that I have never been terribly impressed by her either. And I think that's just more of a personal preference thing there. It's just her in-ring style does nothing for me. She's not flashy. At this point, she's not especially fluid either. Jennifer Blake clearly carries this match, in my opinion. And I think the fact that Jennifer Blake has the name recognition that she does as well helps get this match over through sheer force of will with this crowd as well. Because let's be honest, a lot of this crowd was pretty crummy for most of these matches.
This crowd was also small. But
as compared to what we know nowadays for Girls Night Out shows, yes, absolutely.
Yeah, like this, I mean, you could draw a comparison. Hell, even to me, if you had told me, and I mean this, that this show was in the Berwyn Eagles Club, just with the camera set up differently, I probably would have believed you. That's just exactly what it reminded me of. It reminded me a lot of the Berwyn Eagles Club, and much in a similar way to Shimmer itself, because you see how the shows eventually grow, but you can see in the beginning where their crowds are very, very small. And not only that, though, is that we're 6 days away, I believe, from the next formal AIW show. This was kind of meant as an offshoot a little bit, and it would remain that way. We're 7 years on from this show, almost 7 years, and I believe March will only be the 19th Girls Night Out show. So, at 3 a year, it's a little bit of an offshoot. But we're 6 days removed from the next formal AIW show.
AIW
0 hour.
0 hour, May 21st, 2009. You are correct.
I know, I looked it up. So,
well, not to mention, though, here's the bigger thing you're missing, too, is you mentioned that we're going into Girls Night Out 19 coming up here a little bit later on in the year. I want to say May. I'm not certain.
March 19.
March? Really?
March.
So it's the week before the Gauntlet for the Gold show?
Sound familiar? A week before a show?
Well, because I'm planning on going to Gauntlet for the Gold. Now that I know that Girls Night Out is the week before, I might have to make that work, too. Anyways, to the point that I was about to make about this show here. This was May of 2009. I attended Girls Night Out 3 live. That was January of 2011. Which means in the span of 19 months, they ran 3 Girls Night Out events. So originally it wasn't every it wasn't every 3 months. It was closer to like every 7.
Or let's say once a year.
Well, the pace picked up in 2011 because I want to say Girls Night Out 4 was in either April or June of 2011. So 2011 is when the Girls Night Out volume started picking up in the number of which they were done. For 2009 in 2009 and 2010 there was only 1.
Yeah, I think today they run them pretty much quarterly. Or they shoot for, well, that could still fall as quarterly, but they shoot for like 3 to 4 a year. And I think that actually includes some double tapings where they do 2 shows in a day, similar to what Shimmer volumes are now. I want to say they did that at least once.
Yes, I know for a fact that there have been a couple of days where they taped multiple volumes of Girls Night Out.
3 times. Anyway, we're getting off track again. So Jennifer Blake picks up the victory, and we move on to our 4th and final first-round match. It's explanation time, Harry. It's Jessica Havok versus Super Oprah.
How do you explain Super Oprah to the uninitiated? I don't know that you can.
You said you were going to. So
I don't want to be the one that how do I?
How about we start with what Super Oprah did before the match?
Oh, beating up Potato and the other guy. I don't even know who it was. I think it was Kid Cupid, but I'm not sure. Frankly, they deserve to be up.
So was this more or less them acting like idiots, kind of in a women don't deserve their own show form?
It was a story.
They were real quick. They were at the hard camp side with their shirts off. And one of those guys had his shirt off.
It was a storyline where there were guys protesting the Girls Night Out show. Obviously, Super Oprah took offense to that and proceeded to lay them both out. With back chops aplenty, because apparently Super Oprah is an a-hole. to paraphrase a line from Eddie Kingston.
So, yeah, she beats the hell out of some fans, sends them packing. Hopefully they put a shirt on eventually. ECW One Night Stand, this wasn't, in terms of protests. So, all right, you've had some time to think about it. Super Oprah.
It's a cross-dresser gimmick. It's not exactly been a secret to most Girls Night Out watchers because she wrestled She wrestled Jimmy DeMarco at Girls Night Out 2 and then wrestled Mickey Knuckles at Girls Night Out 3. All right. So I feel the need to preface what I'm about to say by saying I'm actually a fan of Super Oprah's work. I actually think that the person behind the character is a very good worker. But I think this was the wrong place for something like this. And the reason I say that is if you're going to establish yourself a women's title, I don't understand the logic behind not using 8 actual females with which to crown your first women's title.
Perhaps Vince McMahon was booking this show?
I'm going to go ahead and ignore that.
The question is, which one am I referencing?
Well, at the end of the show, they announced that Chandler was the owner at this time frame. Although, to those of us in the AIW community, those of us that have been around the product for a while, we know that AIW is actually co-owned by Chandler Biggins and John Thorne.
So, luckily, though, the right person wins.
Yes, absolutely. And I think that's the important thing to take away here. The match is actually pretty decent, too.
Yeah, I would say, I would almost go so far as to say the best first-round match. Better than you would think it would be.
Well, that's pretty much Super Oprah's matches in a nutshell. They end up being a lot better than you would think they would be. Knowing what I know about Super Oprah, I thought the Purple Nurple and Kiss was probably a bit much.
Yeah.
But, hey, if Havok was willing to do the spot, who am I to judge?
This is true, and this is, once again, a relatively young Jessica Havok. I believe she was only 6 years old?
A year and a half. Say what?
Year and a half. I could have sworn I just heard her in an interview say that she's been doing this for 13 years.
She was 5 years in at this point. I sit corrected. 2004. I could have sworn it was more recent than that.
Ha.
Yeah, whatever.
And I mean, this okay.
Canton? Really? Did not know that.
Oh, really? You didn't know that? Anyway, yeah. However, there's three things that are noticeable about this on Havok's side. One, not only is this pre-Death Machine Havok, two, this is pre-Midwest Militia Havok, as that wouldn't be for a couple more years. And also, this is the one that threw me the hell off, because I had to rewind it like twice to make sure that I heard this. She was billed from the wrestling capital of the world, Chicago Ridge, Illinois.
No, you heard that incorrectly. The women's wrestling capital of the world, Chicago Ridge, Illinois.
Yeah, either way, still, no. Just no.
Well, it's more likely people are going to know Chicago Ridge than they're going to know Berwyn.
Okay, but even still.
Not that she was working for Shimmer at this time frame anyway.
Yeah, that wouldn't happen for 3 more years. 4 more years, sorry. But there's only one company that runs shows in Chicago Ridge, Illinois. Obviously, I'm going to know this. It's right near where I live. It's like 2 towns over. Where I live, Oak Lawn, and then Chicago Ridge. There's only one company that runs shows in Chicago Ridge, and that's Ring of Honor. So, but no. I just found that weird that you were billed from Chicago Ridge, Illinois.
We're still not discussing the elephant in the room here.
What elephant in the room?
Jessica Havok, babyface.
Not even babyface. It's not even the fact that it's a babyface Jessica Havok. I see a babyface Jessica Havok at Shiver right now. I saw a babyface Jessica Havok at AAW for a long time. No. This is super friendly, high-fiving the fans on her way out, babyface Jessica Havok. What? Now, at the same time, this might be a little bit of hometown crowd, being that she is from Ohio. Granted, she's about 2 hours away, but that's the only thing.
No.
It was so weird to see.
No, she was, when she originally started, she was billed from the Cleveland area. Canton is a suburb of Cleveland, sir. It's not a direct suburb, but it's on the way to Cleveland.
Oh, I was thinking south.
No, Cincinnati,
Like
that's Hailey Hatred. Cincinnati is Hailey Hatred.
I was thinking Canton was like way south of Cleveland, I meant.
I don't believe so. Then again, I could be wrong here because my geography has never been great. But I'm pretty sure Akron and Canton are in the same general area. And I live in Youngstown, which is about 45 minutes outside of Akron.
Be that as it may, while I Google this, thanks.
I'm actually working on it now. You talk, I Google.
So, yeah, Havok and Oprah, Jesus. Actually, like we said, have a very good match. Although I did find it funny, one other thing besides Super Babyface Havok is the fact that Havok is tall enough that she stands on the second rope and almost hits her head on a fan. Like, she had to stop herself from going up and had to, like, put a hand up. Otherwise, she actually would have been hit in the head with a fan.
We don't mean somebody at ringside. We mean an actual ceiling fan. To be fair, this building had a very low clearance to begin with.
Oh, no doubt about it.
Canton's about 60 miles south of Cleveland, sir.
That's a little bit, that's about between what we said. I said 2 hours, you said 45 minutes.
No, I said 45 minutes to Akron.
Oh.
From here to Canton, it's probably about an hour.
And Ohio's tiny. Anyway. So Jessica Havok ends up picking up the victory here. So our semifinals are set. It's Sami Lane, Hailey Hatred, Jessica Havok, and Jennifer Blake as the four who will move on. The matches are going to end up being Sami Lane and Jessica Havok facing off, and Jennifer Blake and Hailey Hatred facing off here. But they were nice enough to actually give some formal AIW matches in between the rounds instead of just doing all of the matches back to back to back, thank God. So the next contest, it's going to be story time again. It is Faith in Nothing, Christian Faith and Vincent Nothing, facing the new Beverly Brothers. Because the old Beverly Brothers were so good that they were worth an offshoot. Yeah.
I'm willing to bet that this new Beverly Brothers gimmick was a rib.
It had to be.
And there's a reason I say this, because I told you, and it's now story time with Harry, ladies and gentlemen. Patrick, we were having a conversation about how our first independent shows, because you posted a picture of the first Shimmer event you went to, the flyer that you had that was signed by a bunch of the talent or whatever, and, congratulations on that and all that fun stuff. My very first wrestling independent show was a championship wrestling experience show from May 1st, 2009. I have the show on DVD. It is 2 weeks prior to this. The main event of that particular show is Bobby Beverly and Brady Beverly, or as he's more commonly known in this area, John Chronica, the franchise players, taking on the team of Sean Dahmer and Apollyon, the Straight Jacket Mafia. The point that I make is this. Bobby Beverly would eventually catch on in AIW of his own accord. He would be an integral part of a faction in AIW known as Flexor Industries. John Chronicle would not be seen in AIW again. This was a reintroduction to AIW fans for Vincent Nothing. And I think Christian Faith had been back in AIW for a little bit of time here after the closure, I believe, of Cleveland All Pro. I want to say. I'm not certain on that one, but I'm thinking.
The time frame might match up. For those that don't know also, Christian Faith currently wrestles as Ricky Shane Page.
Yes, that is correct.
Featuring one of the biggest goofy things that ever happened at AAW, but that's neither here nor there.
Christian Faith and Vincent Nothing would go on to win the tag team titles at Absolution 4 a month and a half after this particular show. It would be in mid-May. So 2 months, actually. No, a month.
This is May.
I'll get this right eventually, man. I'm telling you.
No, you won't. Anyway.
No, I won't.
So, wow, yawning already. Sorry. So,
it's not
basically this was just meant to be a very one-sided match, and that's pretty much what we got. And Faith in Nothing ended up picking up the win.
There is one thing here of note to modern-day AIW fans, and that would be the agent involved in this match, and more commonly known as the commentator for AIW, Aaron Bauer McGuire. Pardon the interruption. In my opinion, one of the most underrated color commentators in wrestling.
All right. I may sound like an ass with this, but I'm still going to say it. Pardon the interruption. Wow. Good line. Still has nothing on. Well.
I do miss me some Joel Gertner. I can't lie.
No one can. To me, he's one of the most underrated and possibly one of the best color guys ever.
Actually, I think the guy that used to replace him in the color commentary booth may be my all-time favorite color commentator. Again, we're getting off track. We'll talk more about this later.
The current New Japan commentator? Anyway.
That would be he, Don Callis.
So, moving on. Okay. There's only one thing that bears mentioning in this next thing, and it's not even an actual match. I could have absolutely sworn it was. But it's not on the cage match list. Harry doesn't have it on his list, but I could have absolutely sworn this was a match between the Latin Crime Exchange?
The Latin Crime Syndicate. Joey the Snake, Kay Fernandez, and Luis Diamante.
Sorry. Facing the, God help me, homeless, handicapped Hulkamaniacs.
All right, one-time only thing, actually. They were actually the Homeless and Handicap Connection, Gregory Iron and Hobo Joe.
Still. Gregory Iron, why? You're better than this.
I knew you were going to harp on the brother involvement of this whole thing there, but no, they were usually just the Homeless Handicap Connection.
Oh, no, okay. It actually has nothing to do with the Brother Jack Dude part of it. It's just the whole thing. It turns into a huge brawl, and Triple H ends up, the irony of that is not lost on me. Triple H ends up kind of losing out in the end.
I didn't even put that together until just now.
Both Triple H's actually, because they're Hulkamaniacs, so Hollywood Hulk Hogan. Yeah, I went there. What about it? But anyway, moving on rapidly.
Please.
To the second half of the show we go, and yet again...
Well, technically, no. Technically, the segment with Gregory Iron and Hobo Joe was the start of the second half. Pedro DeLuca said this in the introduction for the segment.
Okay. Yeah, okay. Let's get into the next match first, and then I'll mention something that I brought up to you earlier, because it bears mentioning for me. So the next contest is the first match of the second half, and she did so good in kicking off the main show itself, why not have her kick off the second half of the show? Sami Lane takes on Jessica Havok in a semifinal of the tournament.
So wait, we're switching
No.
the
list on cage match is wrong.
No, the list on cage match is correct. You got it wrong. Hailey Hatred and Jennifer Blake is first, then Sami Lane and Jessica Havok.
And no, cage match is wrong because I have the list in front of me. It has Sami and Havok first. Anyway.
I just closed it. No, I can tell you 100% certainty since I just put the notebook away. Havok and Hatred and Dynamite went first.
You're right. I'm not denying that. So, Hatred and Jennifer Blake is the first semifinal match, and yeah, we can pretty much just go home now.
Yep. Bye, Felicia. Show stolen.
Yeah, without a shadow of a doubt. I'm not even sure we're going to have to do a big finish because I have a feeling we're going to end up harping on this one enough.
No, and that's going to end up being exactly what I say when we get to the best match of the night and to our big finish. Even though there is a forthcoming Intense Division title match that is very good as well, as is traditionally the case when Johnny and Josh get into the ring against each other. That being said, this quite easily was the best thing on the card this evening.
Yeah, this is without a doubt the best match of the show. And you can tell that this is what I feel like this is probably the match that fans would have more expected to be the final. Obviously, it would end up, we'll find out later on, and as Harry already mentioned, when we did the results in the beginning, Sami, ends up being the opponent in the final.
I think that was more to give Hailey a heel to beat in the final.
Fair enough. But this was a final caliber match. And it goes a long time compared to the other matches on this show. With, I want to say, second longest?
Yeah,
no, you just put the notebook.
Second longest, in 1542. The Johnny and Josh that I just mentioned won 1722.
Yeah, so far and away the longest match, and far and away, maybe not far and away, but this is the best one here, and it was just, they beat the hell out of each other.
Far and away the best of the women's matches on this show, we'll say.
Okay, yeah, easily. And they just beat the hell out of each other.
Well, you got to think, both of these women have extensive training overseas. Blake in Mexico, Hatred in Japan, where a much different style of wrestling is expected from the women over there. They're expected to wrestle like the men. The lucha style for Jennifer Blake with the whole Girl Dynamite thing. And then obviously Hailey Hatred coming up in Japan is more known for the Pararesu, the strong, almost the strong style variation of the sport of professional wrestling.
Why do I have a hunch? And I don't even know if the way you said it's right, but I have a hunch someone's going to end up bitching to us about how you just said that word.
I've always heard it as Pararesu. I could be wrong. I don't know. I've never claimed to know the proper pronunciation for it. I am not Gaijin, as it were. Oh, I am Gaijin, as it were. I'm a foreigner to that country.
Cut him some slack, please. Anyway,
It's not like
it's
not
some string names left and right Wrestle Kingdom style.
So, but without a doubt, it was just they started fast and did not stop for 15 minutes. So
you're not going to get any arguments from me here. I think that Jennifer Blake may be one of the more underrated women in independent wrestling at this time frame, and I told you this as well, because I specifically remember telling you the story that the very first time I saw Hailey Hatred, it was a match against Mickey Knuckles at the King of the Death Matches 2003, Night 2. It was a non-death match. It was just a standard one-on-one women's match. Mickey was green as Bruce crap at this point, but Hailey Hatred did absolutely nothing to impress me in this match either.
Oops.
That being said, the Hailey Hatred from back then, as compared to the worker that she would become while over in Japan and when she returned back to the United States, it is a night and day comparison.
Yeah, without a doubt. And like I said, I actually don't have a lot of shows, or I actually don't have a lot of either of their matches. So, for me, this is a little bit of an introduction for me to Hailey Hatred and Jennifer Blake, and looks like yours started off on the wrong foot. This was starting off on the more than right foot for me, particularly with Hailey Hatred, obviously. So, yeah, without a shadow of a doubt, we can skip this when we're in the big finish. Without a doubt, the best match of the night.
Well, and I think Hailey actually has the added benefit, too, of getting a better first-round opponent in Alice in Wonderland as compared to Jennifer Blake drawing Brittany Force.
Yeah.
But definitely the two most impressive females in the first round to me were Jennifer Blake and Hailey Hatred, and I'm a little surprised that they did this match as a semifinal as well, but theoretically it makes sense that they'd want to do face-heel for the title in the main event.
Yeah, and somebody has to get beat by the heel, and in this case, sorry, Jess. Our next contest, the second semifinal match, Jessica Havok.
4 minutes.
Lane.
4 minutes and 37 seconds. Way to make women's wrestling matter.
Well, okay, we're not in the time of give divas a chance or the women's revolution yet, but...
No, well, but at the same time, if you're trying to establish a women's division show and one of your semifinal matches to crown your first champion goes less than 5 minutes, people are going to start wondering what the...
Okay, but at the same time, we're talking about a show that just had Super Oprah. So they can't be really taking it 100% seriously.
No, Girls Night Out wouldn't become what it's become nowadays until around Volume 3, the first one that I went to. Because the first one that I went to had such names as Sarah Del Rey, Madison Eagles, Allison Kay, Jessica Havok, Mickey Knuckles.
Would that be Shimmer Champion Madison Eagles, I assume?
I do believe it would be Shimmer Champion Madison Eagles taking on the Clash's Nina Libra.
Oh, I'm darned. So,
possibly the loudest roundhouse kick I have ever heard in my life.
Sounds about right.
She kicked the dog crap out of Mina with this thing.
Sorry, Mina. So, yeah, it seemed like... I think it's fair to say at this time they weren't sure Girls Night Out was going to be a thing. Obviously, we know now it's a thing. But you could venture a guess to say that this Girls Night Out is strictly to name a women's champion. That's it. So at the same time, hang on. Let me finish my point. At the same time, I'm somewhat okay with it being only 4.5 minutes because Sami Lane cheats to win. It was a surprise. So it's going to have a sudden ending. Now, do I prefer it going at least a little bit longer? Yes, absolutely. Give Sami and Havok, a little time to show what they can do. but also haven't kind of had a chance to shine against Super Oprah. Still sounds weird no matter how often I say it.
No, there's no getting around that, and it's taking everything in me to not use the actual name for the competitor, because I've almost slipped up and said it twice.
Yeah, well, don't do that. Well, this will be one of the last mentions of it. So, it was a shocking ending, I believe the shortest match of the night. So, I wish it had gone longer, but I'm okay with it being shorter, considering that Sammy cheated to win.
I mean, yes, to an extent, you kind of have to expect that they're not going to want to do face-to-face in the finals as well. Although, again, Jessica coming in from Cleveland All-Pro does have kind of that background about her, too, and that she's going to be known by the AIW fan base. So I don't think it's would have been all that surprising to fans if they would have done face-to-face in the finals between Jessica and Hailey.
So, alrighty, our finals are now set. It is going to be Hailey Hatred and Sami Zayn, the winner becoming the first ever AIW Women's Champion. Take a guess. But that will actually be the last of the title matches. So we move on to the eighth match of the night.
And our first title match.
And our first of back-to-back-to-back title matches. And it is the young studs of Eric Ryan and TJ Dynamite, the AIW Tag Team Champions, taking on Lewis Linden and Flip Kendrick, Arrow form. For those that don't know, and I think a lot of people do by this point, yeah. And also, Harry mentioned it earlier, they are actually brothers. And I know Lewis very, very well from AAW. I've seen Flip a few times. Not nearly as much as I saw Lewis, though.
I would imagine that right around the time that Lewis was breaking into AAW is when Flip had his run with TNA.
Maybe a little later for Flip. Oh, okay, never mind. I'm getting... Okay. Yeah, that sounds about right.
Around summer of 2012.
Yeah. That was about the time I started going to AAW shows more often than just their Bourbon Street shows. And I would see Lewis quite often, actually, at AAW shows in Berwyn. It's hard to try and differentiate AIW with AAW and 115 Bourbon Street with the Berwyn Eagles Club. Anyway.
That's all, folks.
Exactly. I'm going to sum up this match in one word. Ow!
Yeah, the match itself isn't anything... It's not bad. It's not anything great either, though. It's kind of more or less just there. You can clearly tell that the Young Studs are going to keep the titles here. They're not going to drop them on a non-AIW show, by which I mean a non... Well, then again, you probably would have thought that about Johnny Gargano, too, and look what happened in the next match.
I was about to say, you're saying that, and think about the next match. Anyway.
Yeah, well, in this particular instance, though, with the return of Faith in Nothing earlier in the show, you got to think that they're going to want to keep the titles on the heel team of the Young Studs and Eric Ryan and TJ Dynamite. But, yeah, in a move that many a man, arguably every man in the history of ever can sympathize with, I'll go ahead and let you give the explanation as to why you said ow.
Flip Kendrick castrates himself.
It was Lewis Linden, but thanks for playing.
I'm tired, too. Leave me alone. Either way, he damn near castrates himself.
Okay, so to put this into perspective for those of you listening now, since Patrick didn't actually go into the details, so TJ Dynamite is on the floor. And Lewis Linden bounces off the far ropes and goes for a Flip Kendrick dive. See what I did there? That's what makes it funny. Anyways, goes for a flip dive over the ropes to TJ Dynamite.
No.
No sell it all you want to. It's still funny. Anyways. he overshoots TJ Dynamite.
By about a foot.
Yeah, the problem is that foot that he overshoots TJ Dynamite by is exactly where the guardrail is. Landing crotch first on the guardrail from probably about, I'd say conservatively 7 to 10 feet up in the air.
Yeah, 10 feet in the air, and he's probably hitting his head on the ceiling. But he comes down from a fair distance and essentially lands nuts first on the guardrail. Oh.
That is a torture rack you want no part of.
And I believe it was to the point that from then on, he's out of the match, and he has to be helped to the back.
I'm almost certain that him landing the way that he did caused an early finish to this contest here, because inside of the ring almost immediately after that happens is when Eric Ryan uppercuts, or as I've used the phrase before, upper nuts, flips Kendrick, and then scores with a roll-up for the 1-2-3 almost immediately after it happens to Lyndon.
Yeah, it just, And like I said, Lyndon has to be helped to the back. He can barely walk. And I cannot even imagine how much pain he's in. Landing on a guardrail that did not move, because he went down on it rather than out.
Needless to say, I think any man in the history of ever could sympathize with his plight.
Oh. Moving on.
So this is around the time
team that you would expect to win does win.
Yes, the Young Stud.
Yes.
Our next contest, the person you would expect to win did not win. And obviously I screwed it up, because I thought for sure that I was almost certain that Prohibition was the champion going into this match, but I was corrected earlier, and Patrick is right. I checked him even on the cage match page there.
We can break even, though. This is the start of Josh's first. I said regain, but I was wrong. I was wrong on that part.
You would be wrong about when he would lose the title as well. I'd have to look up the specifics on Cage Match after the show, and we'll talk about this more on the Facebook page. Which, by the way, where can they find us on Facebook?
Facebook.com/Wrestling Unwrapped, of course.
You got it changed? Oh, no. It's the Twitter that has the other handle, which is
at WU Off the Shelf. I won't lie. The reason I hesitated there is because I almost gave the wrong Facebook URL. So I should mention the fact that we were both actually a little bit wrong, because you had thought that Josh Prohibition was the champion going in, and I said no, Johnny Gargano was. But actually, I was a little bit wrong, too, when I said that he would regain the championship here. This was actually the beginning of his very first title reign, and I believe his only title reign, which he would lose somewhere in the span of 3 months later.
I want to say he's the current absolute heavyweight champion. At least I know he was for a while. If I'm not mistaken, he still is.
Yeah, I think he still is.
All right, but anyways, back to the scope of this particular match here. The main thing that I wanted to point out here is, I assume you know this, even though you couldn't hear commentary here. You know Gargano is a student of Prohibition, right?
I knew that Gargano was trained by Josh Prohibition, and Josh Prohibition might be one of, don't take this the wrong way, might be one of the weirder stories, because we're talking about a guy who essentially made his name in backyard wrestling, and then went to school, became formally trained, and actually became a damn good wrestler.
The natural ability was there. It was once he got into the area and the Cleveland All Pro Wrestling thing with JT Lightning, that he developed more and more as an actual worker in regards to just beyond what he was doing in the backyard with a guy like M-Dog 20 Matt Cross. Because Cross and Prohibition are listed as Gargano's trainers.
Which that would make a lot of sense, though. For those that don't know, it's funny that we mentioned Jessica Havok here because Matt Cross is known to Lucha Underground fans as her son.
That's not funny.
I'm kind of not kidding. He is known as Son of Havok.
Yeah, but it's spelled differently and all that other stuff.
Anyway. So, in terms of the match itself, I mean, there was no surprise that the tag titles changed hands. I am surprised that this title changed hands. And it wasn't even it was not a bad match by any stretch of the imagination, and obviously it would be the longest of the night. But nothing really seemed to stand out to me.
I would argue that their match that they had against each other in Pro Wrestling Ohio at Revolution was significantly better than this one was. But at the same time, I got to think that the relatively, as you mentioned earlier, the relatively small crowd played a part in that as well. And I know that the whole wrestler thought process is supposed to be rather you're going out there for 550, 500, 5,000. It really shouldn't matter what the size of the crowd is. You should still be trying your best to put in your best performance. But let's be honest here. That's not always the case, and especially on these kind of B shows. We would definitely go on to see much better things from Johnny Gargano in AIW. We would go on to see the reinvigoration of Josh Prohibition when he returned to the world of professional wrestling for AIW as well back in 2011. This right here was the opportunity for these guys to have a match in order to further the storyline of having Josh win the title here in order to set up a rematch between the two of them. And I think the rematch between the two of them also involved Matt Cross at Absolution 4, if I'm not mistaken.
Mistaken?
I corrected myself.
Are you mustached, too?
I mustache you a question. Now I'll shave it for later.
You need to say it with a Connery accent. Anyway, so, yeah, Josh Prohibition ends up winning the belt here in a little bit of a surprise. Like I said, it's not a bad match, but nothing really stood out for me. But I don't know that it even has anything to do with being a B show. I wonder if they kind of saved everything for the finals of the tournament, knowing that that was going to be a big moment anyway.
Yeah, I think that's a lot of what I had to do here is that you don't want to upstage the main event of your show, and they knew that their moment would come at Absolution when they had the return match with the title on the line.
Yeah, so kind of a shocking moment. So Josh Prohibition is now the Intense Wrestling Champion.
Do you think any of this may have had to do with this was around the time that Johnny Gargano started breaking out in the independent wrestling scene?
Was he at this point? Because he was still Johnny Man Bun here.
Yeah, and it was as Johnny Man Bun that he debuted for Shakara, and I'm pretty sure it was as Johnny Man Bun that he debuted for the very first Dragon Gate USA show that he was on, too, when he was in that fray.
I don't know about that one.
Almost certain.
Okay, fair enough. So I prefer short hair Johnny wrestling, but that's neither here nor there. So we already have one title change, and now it is main event time where we're guaranteed to have a new champion. I'm okay with this. So it is the finals of the tournament. The final match, the seventh match, to crown the first ever AIW Women's Champion. It is Hailey Hatred versus Sami Lane, heel-face dynamic, Who does this speak to, Sammy or Hailey? Because to me, this match wasn't great.
I put more of the blame on Sammy than I do Hailey here, because both of Hailey's matches up to this point had been spectacular. A really good match with Alice in Wonderland that kind of came out of nowhere, because let's be honest, Allison's always been known more as a valet rather than a worker. And obviously the match of the night that we discussed earlier with Jennifer Blake, whereas both of Sammy's matches had to be classified as disappointments against Mary Elizabeth and the incredibly short match against Jessica Havok.
And if I'm not mistaken, and I might be wrong ever so slightly, but I would go so far as to ask, did just Hailey versus Jennifer Blake last longer than all three of Sami Lane's matches combined?
No.
I have a feeling it would be close. Maybe not that, but I feel like it'd be close.
No, because the main event was almost 10 minutes. The Hailey and Jennifer went 15:42. Sammy's three matches are 5:41, 4:37, and then the main event is 9:55.
So roughly 20 minutes. All right. That's eyeballing it, just so you know. Don't get mad at me.
About 20, yeah. A little over. But
yeah.
Once you round up for seconds and stuff. But, yeah, about 20.
So it just... At this rate, I would have said put the semifinal as your final. I understand heel overcoming the face, but in this case, the face overcoming the heel. But in this case, Sammy didn't do too much in terms of trying to win, considering the fact that she cheated to win in her other two matches. But it didn't really seem like she tried anything like that here, and it felt like the only person who actually would have had a shot at beating Hailey, which we regarded earlier as the female face of AIW at this point, but the only one who would have had a shot would have been Jennifer Blake. And I would have just said, you know what, screw it, face, and they shake hands at the end of the match and just make it the final. And just have Jennifer say, I want a shot at the belt again, somewhere. Sometime down the line, I want a shot at the belt. Done. It's better than what we got here.
Well, and then when we turn around and realize that they did the same match for Girls Night Out 2 as well. Girls Night Out 2, it's Hailey Hatred defending the women's title against Sami Lane.
My question is, why? Because in all three matches, Sami Lane did not seem very good. And she might be good. This is the only time I've ever seen her, ever. I didn't even know she existed.
Yeah, this show and Girls Night Out 2 are the only times I've seen Sammy. So maybe it was a case of the travel got to her in the process of coming to do the Girls Night Out shows, but I was not impressed by anything that I saw.
So yes. So in the end, after all is said and done, and an almost 3-hour show, which kind of surprised me, your first ever AIW Women's Champion is Hailey Hatred. Maybe telegraphed it a little bit with everything we've talked about with Hailey. I will mention one thing. Immediately after the thank you for watching screen that AIW has, Hailey Hatred cuts a promo. There's a problem. I couldn't tell you a damn word she said. I have no clue what she said. She spoke so fast because it was after the match. She spoke so fast I could not understand a word she said. So
I have no memory of this promo, nor do I have the opportunity to be able to rewatch it in time for the show. I can give you my thoughts on it after I finish rewatching the promo. I watched the matches in order to be able to do the show. I didn't get a chance to watch Hailey's promo.
Yeah, fair enough. Just so you know, it actually airs continuously after.
I actually do want to ask you one quick question about this match that we kind of didn't discuss on. Do you think they made the right decision in having these two brawl around the building, since that was the only time that it happened on the entire evening?
I would say yes. Gets the fans into a little more, because let's be honest, almost any time that you see a brawl into the crowd, it's gonna build up the crowd. They're gonna get more into it, I would say, and it's not like it's something that they just threw out there every single time. You know, if this was the only time that they did it, probably would have been the best time to do it, and it was just a little something compared to the other matches that we saw for the whole night. I'm okay with it. Sorry.
I just wanted to get your opinion on that, since we didn't actually discuss it earlier.
That's fair enough. So that is the finish of AIW Girls Night Out 1. Any final thoughts before we get to the big finish?
In case you were wondering, you mentioned that the show runs almost 3 hours. It does indeed. Officially, it is 2 hours, 44 minutes, 1 second. 1:15:12 and 1:28:49.
Which surprises me, because I think every other, specifically women's show, like first show that we've done, I think it's barely run 2 hours. So seeing that it ran 2:45 actually surprised me.
Well, you got to figure in they peppered in 3 men's matches as well, plus the non-match between the Homeless Handicap Connection and the Latin Crime Syndicate.
Get it right. I know we don't like talking about him, but get it right.
No, it's the Homeless Handicapped Hulkamaniacs, brother.
Thank you. I know we don't like mentioning him, but oh well. Anyway.
Good talk.
Anywho, big finish time, and I know we usually kind of we usually start with the worst match of the show, but in this case, why don't we just get this out of the way? Best match of the show. We already agreed, and we already mentioned it, by far the semifinal match between Hailey Hatred and Jennifer Blake. We already talked about it, so it's just easily the best match, at least easily the best women's match, and I would still put it even above Gargano and Prohibition, which was a good match itself. But any disagreement?
No. It's
right.
Hailey and Jennifer Blake.
Fair enough. I have a hunch we're going to agree on this one, too. What's your worst match?
Well,
you're stuck on 2, aren't you? And I know which 2.
Yeah, and they both involve the same person.
I knew that it was that. Well, here, can I guess? Since it's obvious.
Obviously, it's the first round and semifinal matches for Sami Lane against Mary Elizabeth and Jessica Havok.
Yeah, that was a given.
And I think I'm going to go with the Mary Elizabeth match, just because A, I don't want Jessica Havok to kill me, and B, I think that there was more storyline purposes of Sami Lane cheating to win to pick up a quick victory over Havok in the semifinal, whereas you had a heel over a babyface in 5.5 minutes dirty to kick off your very first women's show. I don't think it's so much the quality of the ring work of the two women, because I honestly didn't expect much. But at the same time, given its placing on the card and the fact that you have a limited audience to start with here, you might want to give them something a little bit more to start the show with. that make sense?
Absolutely.
Intensely.
I was waiting for absolution, actually.
All right, what about you? Are you finding yourself in the same position?
Yep, the exact same position. That's why I knew that that's why I knew which two it was that you were stuck on. Oh. If she ever listens to this, and I know that she's listened to some in the past, I'm sorry. It's not you. Sami Zayn versus Jessica Havok. If you're in a tournament and you're in a semifinal match, yes, I said that I was okay with the short win, with the short match. But I wished it was longer. Like we said, you went from one semifinal match being over 15 minutes to one semifinal match being less than 5. I almost wish they had somehow called an audible and had Jessica win. Because at no point did Sami Zayn impress me. And like we said, this is not the Havok that we know now. This is not yet the TNA Knockout Champion Havok. This is not yet the Shimmer ass kicker that we know now. Which, at this point, she's not where she would be, but she's not bad. Like we said, she actually got a very good match against Super Oprah. Okay, one more mention. So, if the quality of the match is this bad, I know it's going to sound like I'm copping out because of the fact that I am friends with her. But at the same time, like you said, first round match was a hell of a lot better. No Sami Zayn match was really that good to me, including the final. How can I put the blame on Jessica? So for me, Jessica Havok versus Sami Zayn. Jess, please don't kill me.
I think that the issue that I find at hand in regards to how they did this here is that, all right, I understand that you want Sami Zayn to be something going forward in the division. At the same time, though, when you're trying to establish a title, you have to give us a reason to care about the title. Hailey Hatred gave us a reason to care about the title and a reason to care about her. At no point in any of her matches did Sami Zayn do that for me.
Aside from cheating to win. That was it. Like, it.
Her offense was super basic. None of her movesets stuck out to me. I just rewatched the show today, and not a single move she did sticks out to me.
Exact same. I watched it today too.
Whereas with Hailey Hatred, I think of the Fisherwoman Buster. I think of her running.
Suplex.
Say what?
Her Saito suplex.
Yeah, the backdrop driver. Her running Yakuza kick. I mean, all three of those moves are trademark Japan moves, but you also associate them with Hailey because of her time in Japan and the fact that she's bringing that style of wrestling to AIW's women's division. Jennifer Blake, you think of that super dynamic super kick. You think of all the arm drives and stuff because Jennifer Blake trained in Mexico, has some training in Mexico under the luchador style. She stands out. Hailey Hatred stands out. Jessica Havok's power game wasn't to the point where it is now, but at the same time, she still had a power-based offense against somebody like Sami Zayn because she towers over Sami Zayn by a good half a foot.
Towered over everybody except Super Oprah. Maybe Mary Elizabeth.
All
right. So switching gears, cash and trash time. What is your cash? What do you like about this show?
I think if you're going to be a major independent promotion in the United States, you need a women's division. And the reason I say that is because there is a sense of variety that having a women's division brings to a promotion that I don't feel like certain companies are understanding. I think CZW misses the boat in this regard. I think for the longest time, IWA Mid-South missed the boat in this regard. I think AAW absolutely misses the boat in this regard. But that's because they have Shimmer right there, so I can't really super blame AAW for that. AIW...
real quick, CZW has WSU.
Yeah, but you almost never see anything done in CZW with the women of WSU, though.
Fair enough.
How many women in WSU are regularly wrestling for CZW? 2? Maybe 3?
Yeah.
AAW, you're more than likely going to see, on a Shimmer weekend, you're going to see a ton of the Shimmer women at the AAW show.
Then, like, just their last LaSalle show. They didn't have a women's match at Bourbon Street, but their last LaSalle show, they had Samantha Heights and Candice LeRae versus Havok and AK-47.
So I think in order to help kind of get that variety out there, you need a women's division. And this was a step in the right direction for AIW by creating a women's division of which to give fans more variety in the AIW product. Patrick, how about you? What's your catch for this show?
For me, it's not specifically the fact that it is Hailey Hatred, but to me, it's the fact that the right person won out of the 7. Like we've pretty much mentioned all night, Hailey Hatred was the female face of AIW. So if you're going to look at her like that, it's pretty much the only proper thing to do is to have her be the leader of the division. So there's really no other person that I think could have filled the shoes of a beginning leader of a division. There's no person that I think fit the bill better than Hailey Hatred. So I'm actually glad that Hailey was the first one to win the belt. Probably could have given it to Jennifer Blake too, but in this case, in my eyes, the absolute, pardon the pun, right person won to be the first women's champion.
You know what I think we're going to have to do at some point here? I think because I know you have it, and obviously I do as well. I think we're going to have to come back to AIW's Girls Night Out. We're going to have to visit the second Girls Night Out show to see if they develop anything between this first show and then that second show, which happened in the summer of 2010, if I'm not mistaken.
So over a year later.
Oh, no, excuse me. The next AIW Girls Night Out show is actually October of 2009, so 5 months later, and then the third one wouldn't be until 2011.
Wow. Alrighty. Yeah, we should. There's a lot of things we should go back to, one of which we do next week.
We'll plug our shows here in a little bit, plus people can find out on Facebook and Twitter.
I know.
We'll talk about those in a few seconds, too. But let's get through the rest of the big finish here real quick.
All right, so what's your trash?
Did you know this show had commentary?
No, for the first half. Damn it, you took mine.
Yeah. This show has commentary. You just can't hear a fucking word of it. This is
I did not realize there was commentary. I did not realize there was commentary until I put in disc 2.
And this is the problem that I have with companies that do live commentary. If you're going to do live commentary, you have to feed the show commentary into the DVD as well. Because if you don't feed the commentary into the DVD as well, the people at home are not going to have a fucking clue what the commentators are saying. I could not hear a single word Matt Wadsworth or Denver, Colorado, the person.
Not the place.
had to say the entire evening. I caught little bits and pieces of words here and there, but never anything fully clear over the sound on the DVD.
And we talked about this when we were going through the show. I did not hear a single word. As a matter of fact, I think I actually texted you and asked you, did you hear anything in the background? Because I did not even realize it until probably the 6th or 7th match. I do think the volumes were different for the first half and the second half. It drove me nuts, though. I'm like, I have no clue what they're saying. None. And you have better hearing than I do, because I didn't hear a thing for the entire second disc either.
It's unfortunate because once you reach that point in 2011, I want to say it's the name of the tournament that we're no longer allowed to say due to legal obligation. Okay, that they're no longer allowed to say due to legal obligations. It was 2011 Todd Pettengill Invitational, which was a parody of the IWA Mid-South Ted Petty Invitational, but at the same time, still same concept. It's a tournament to crown whatever you have you. In this case, I think it crowns a new champion off of a vacant title. But anyway, in that particular instance, they went to the now more commonly accepted practice of doing the commentary to the track that the DVD is recording on the master camera, on the hard cam, much the same way Smart Mark does AAW's commentary by having Phil Colvin and Derek St. Holmes and Dave Prazak on occasion, and whatever the new guy's name is. Sorry, new guy. Don't know enough about you yet to care. Don't know enough about you yet to care. They have their microphones plugged into the hard cam so that you can pick up every word that they're saying. AIW did that for the 2011 Todd Pettengill Invitational and has done their commentary that way ever since.
How about naming a show Won't Back Down and you do the Tom Petty Invitational?
I hope my phone picked me up face palming there. I really do.
Yeah, I heard you. Don't worry.
I got a migraine and I still hit myself in the forehead because of how bad that joke was.
You said it was a joke.
But that makes it even worse if you're actually wanting people to do final ratings.
Well, actually, real quick, I can find a second thing I can moan about then. Everything else.
Let's just... You already bitched about the production values earlier. Can we go into the final ratings, please? We're actually on a reasonable pace, and I'd like to keep it that way.
Indeed. So, as we finish up here with AIW Girls Night Out 1, here on Wrestling Unwrapped, Harry, what is your final score? For
5.
5.
And Hailey Hatred versus Jennifer Blake and Johnny Gargano and Josh Prohibition saved it from a 3. Sami Lane adds exactly nothing of value.
I really enjoyed the Jessica Havok Super Oprah match. I really enjoyed Hailey Hatred and Alice in Wonderland. I thought that Jennifer Blake and Brittany Force was tolerable. I did not care for the fact that a well-known tag team from the area where I was going to as an independent wrestling fan was basically squashed in less than 4 minutes. Because if you notice, watching back that match there, it's 4 minutes. I don't think Brady Beverly, BKA, John Kronika gets a single move of offense in, except for a flatliner. And I think the only move that Bobby Beverly gets in is a elbow strike as a splash in the corner with the elbow.
Eek.
No more reason to heap any further praise on Blake and Hatred. We've already done enough of that. Havok and Sami Lane is a colossal disappointment. I understand the storyline reason for it. Still a colossal disappointment. The tag team match is okay. It's kind of just there. Gargano and Prohibition is good, but they'd have better against each other. The main event is just there in order to get the belt to Hailey. I'm going with a 5.
Yeah, this is a fairly tough one to call because, like we said, the semifinal match is great. The Intense title match is pretty good. Oprah and Havok is better than it should have been. But other than that, there's not much. And the part that sucks is the show is about the women. One of the best matches has no women. The best match involving the women isn't the final. And the best of the first round features 2 people that were nowhere near the final. It almost sucks that I actually want to give it a 4, and I think I'm going to, because there's a lot that drives me nuts here, even just as a fan. I won't go into detail. A lot of the production I don't like. Like we said, we couldn't hear the commentary, and the ring was really spongy. Like really, really, it caves in when you stepped on it. Really spongy, and other stuff too. And unfortunately, as good as Blake and Hatred is, and as pretty good as Prohibition and Gargano is, it's not enough to offset everything. That just drove me nuts about this. So I'm actually going to, one of the rare cases, actually go lower than you and only give it a 4. And I hate doing that, but yeah, I'm going with a 4.
The Girls Night Out shows would get significantly better with time.
Far and away. I'm probably going to watch 13 tonight.
Unfortunately, unlike a show like Shine, which got off to a relatively strong start, unlike a show like Shimmer, which got off to a very strong start, by and far the worst of the women's promotion launches that we have covered yet here on Wrestling Unwrapped.
And we haven't covered WSU's first show yet, and I don't know that we ever will, because I don't know that I can ever find it.
I don't even know what WSU's first show was. All right, let's get out of here. If you want to find us on Facebook, you can find us where, Patrick?
That would be facebook.com/Wrestling Unwrapped. If you want to find us on Twitter, at HEB the Eagle for him, at Pat Ketza for me, and for the show, at WU Off the Shelf.
Tonight's episode of Wrestling Unwrapped was brought to you by the Madhouse Toy Chest. Stores.ebay.com/Madhouse Toy Chest. If you are a fan of anything wrestling, DVDs, action figures, VHS tapes, magazines, and posters, you can find them inside of the Madhouse Toy Chest amongst a crap ton of other stuff. Seriously, it really doesn't matter what entertainment-related you're into, you can find stuff related to it inside of the Toy Chest. Mention you heard this advertisement here on Wrestling Unwrapped, receive a free gift with your purchase. That is stores.ebay.com/Madhouse Toy Chest. We are a presentation of the W2M Network, as well as a presentation of W2Mnet.com. Be on the lookout for Shine Volume 1 coming soon to our typed archives. Patrick and I are going to work on our Survivor Series 2016 typed to review as well shortly. And obviously we've got to get to this show too, so we'll see how that all works out for you. Patrick, send us home.
And indeed, be sure to join us next week as we will be back, and we will be going back to Clive, Iowa. We will be reviewing the second Wrestling Revolver show, Iowa Goes Lucha, ahead of the 2 big shows that they have, one in March, one in May, and we'll be able to see if they've improved among their first shows. So that will be next week.
Yeah, hopefully that color commentator guy that annoyed the crap out of me isn't there for the second show.
God, I hope so. Speaking of annoying color commentators, I'm Patrick Ketza. he's here at Broadhurst. And also for Sean Garmer, we will see you next week. You have been listening to Wrestling Unwrapped Review Girls Night Out 1 here on the W2M Network.
The following podcast is a W2M Network original production. Visit W2Mnet.com for all of our other great podcasts, plus news, reviews, articles, and opinions from the worlds of wrestling, video games, football, and entertainment.